Hello, hello. So, this is Ayub back for the podcast, and today I'll be hosting it with Mecca, who also made episodes for this podcast in the past. And today we're going to talk about studying in a second language. So, especially in Ottu, I think almost everybody is studying in a second language unless we have Americans, which I haven't seen. But for most of us, even internationals, we have a lot of people from Indonesia, South Asia, Africa, Middle East, and most of us have a different first language. And funnily enough, it's not just true for us because Utsu's medium of instruction is English. So even for the majority of students, for Turkish students, even for them, it's the same feeling because they're also studying in a second language. And I feel like it's initially kind of a hard thing. Now, some of us actually did study school in English, so we kind of faced this early on. Because obviously, if you start studying in English in, let's say, middle school, it's kind of easier for you to adapt. But for a lot of us, it was something really new because here and there you had some English, you had perhaps English as a subject, but you never had to study every single thing in English. And I feel like it's not just a problem for the students, it can be also a problem for the teachers, the hojas. I've noticed, for example, if a concept is too complicated, even the hojas find it more convenient to explain in Turkish, not just for themselves, or maybe not even for themselves, but for the students, so they can get a better understanding. And I feel like it's something that is tough but useful. Because here's my argument. Even if you study in your own language, uh, that's not a bad thing. Definitely not. Because obviously, the main goal here is education. You need to get knowledge. You need to apply that knowledge in your career. That's the main goal. But if you study in English, at least first of all, you'll get another language as an asset, and you can use that language to like empower yourself. What I mean by this is, for let's say, Otsu was completely in Turkish. The medium of instruction was in Turkish. Um, in that case, we would study in Turkish. Okay. Uh, as a Turkish student, it would have been easier for you. You don't have to spend 1 year in preparatory school. But here's the thing. If you wanted to move on to Europe, not just for career, maybe just for getting a master's, or even in life, like maybe, okay, you're like, okay, I'm going to study in Turkey. But let's say 10 years down the road, your company says, like, okay, we want to send someone to America for a month and we want them to like do some research or maybe just like attend a kind of company conference, anything. In that case, you would be in the back seat because someone else would be like, okay, I understand English, and the company would prefer that. So not just I'm not saying that it will be helpful to you right now or not be helpful to you right now, because especially let's say you're going to work in a Turkish company that has no connection with English in any way. Okay, then you will feel like, okay, maybe I just had to go through a lot of trouble, especially understanding the concept is not something easy, which I will come to in a bit. But you know, eventually at some point in life it could be really helpful. And just, knowing academic English, I feel like that's even better sometimes than knowing like basic conversation English. For example, a lot of people, they know English in a casual sense. They listen to music, they watch memes on Instagram maybe, and they know like some level of slang English. But when it comes to a conference, when it comes to business meeting, when it comes to anything career wise, they cannot really apply that. You cannot say slay, let's say, in an interview. Like a lot of colloquial terms, you cannot use them in a serious sense. And okay, you could make friends, but what I'm saying is that academic English could play a more significant part in your life. So I think you should think of it as an asset. Yes, it's a bit of a trouble in the start. You have to prepare yourself for English, and perhaps in the first year you don't even understand every single thing. But still, it's I think it's something that sometimes you'll see maybe a bit down the road, especially if you're not moving to Europe immediately after graduation. But yeah, I think we should look on the bright side. And also, I think there are a lot of things in this world that are, useless skills. Like, I think I'll have to come out and say it, but let's say the line equation. Most of us are never going to use it. We know it, okay, fine, but we're not actually going to use it. It's not even some useful practical knowledge. Because most of us are not going to study lore of mathematics. But let's say a lot of people are making fun of like the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. At least it's some knowledge that you can talk about, you can read about. But mathematics is a technical thing. So I feel like a lot of us are not going to use it. But I think language is a skill that is never useless. You could be learning one of like the most unrelated languages or anything. But I think it's always useful to have language as an asset, not just for your career, not just for your resume, just in general. I feel like it's always an asset to have. There's never a language that you spend time learning and like you can never say like, oh, I wasted my time learning this language. And of course, in today's world, we have to accept that English is the most useful asset. Knowing English is the most useful asset that you can have. And I think we should be kind of grateful that we get practice in university through academics, even if not through conversation and all that. But at least through academics, we get good practice. And it gives you like a head start. So if you're more interested in English, you already have some kind of a level. You have already developed a level through the preparatory year. So I think, yeah, you should use it to your advantage. And Mecca, what is your experience and what is your opinion on this?
Hello, Ayub, my friend. Thank you for adding me to your podcast as your guest. I am Marwan. I'm really glad and honored to be with you. Um, the topic that you have been talking about is actually it's really important to be aware that the education in English these days is really beneficial to the students and to the teachers. That is when they know how to speak English, which is really not it's not in every class. But I'm not gonna start criticism from the beginning of my part in the discussion. Um, well, I would like to first of all appreciate the comments that you have made about the most important points from your own perspective of learning in English and having the education academically in English, both for the teachers and for the students in Turkey. As another student in MITO, however, in social sciences, I am a student in history department, for those who don't know. I am a third year student right now, and I have come across very different types of teachers, those who um, use English as much as they can, but prefer to move to Turkish, as you have mentioned, when the situation becomes a bit complicated, when the topic is a bit hard to explain, both because it's easier for them to explain it in their own native language, given that they're Turkish professors, and because they are aware that it's easier um, for the students who are, especially in my history department, 99.99% Turkish. Um, so this is the first part. The second kind of professors are those who speak full English. I have come across a couple of them, and one of them is already from Texas, and they don't know Turkish that much. So it's their native language. I cannot really comment on that. But there is a couple of Turkish professors whom I have come across and who prefer to speak English totally, and that's their own choice. That's their preference. And of course, there's a third part, third kind that speaks total Turkish, although the topic or the subject is not Turkish. So I would actually, um, I would say that the second kind, the second type is the best because I am aware that some concepts are hard to understand, even for me, in English, because as it's clear, I am not a native English speaker myself. My native language is Egyptian or Arabic. So if I were in Egypt and I'm taking class and there is this very complicated part that I am not understanding, I would like my professor to explain it to me in Arabic. So there is no judgment whatsoever from my part, and I think it's the best to explain some things in a native language in order to be absorbed and understood totally by the students. However, this should not be the rule. I think that we have to get out of our comfort zone as much as possible to improve the language, to improve the learning skills and the perception of every and each word in its real sense as a native speaker would perceive it, so that you would, as they say, the very well known cliche, no pain, no gain. So pushing the comfort zone limits a bit would be actually very beneficial. So I would suggest that if any teacher, which is a very small possibility, is listening to this, um, it's very critical to explain some terms, explain some concepts, especially in classes that are related to abstract ideas. Like, for example, in my department, there's a class called methodology in history, which is all abstract and concepts and philosophies and theories. So sometimes it's really important to say what you're gonna say in English, but then explain it in Turkish for to make sure that everybody is included in understanding this concept. Um, moving from here to another I'm gonna try to make a smooth transition from this part I just talked about to another part, which is moving abroad or working abroad or having the small potential to work abroad or to meet with other people in an official environment, in a professional environment in the future, who are native English speakers. I think that now, when we are a bit younger, trying to force ourselves out of the comfort zone into a much more, um, how can I say it, a harsh linguistic environment in which we are forcing ourselves to speak English and to read English academically, officially, and unofficially, would really be very, very, very beneficial for us in the future. Right now, for example, I am teaching English myself to a couple of students who are businessmen in their 40s. And for them, it's much harder to learn at a later age. And a couple of them told me that it would have been much easier if they started doing this when they were in their 20s or early years, because of course there's much more energy, much more capacity, and most importantly, now we have some time, we have some free time to be able to expand our knowledge of the language, let alone that already our curriculums are in English. So that's a very good opportunity to force ourselves to improve a bit in this sense. And I noticed that most foreigners, and me too, know English better than the Turkish people, which is very clear why, because a foreigner is forced to know English, not because a foreigner has more potential. That's completely garbage. Every human being has the same potential. and every human being has equal capacities of learning and equal potential of learning and of being perfect in whatever field it is. But the thing is, Turkish people in like my friends, for example, whom I have observed, are much more comfortable, which is understandable in speaking Turkish. However, this comfort makes you unable to improve and to move through the levels, of language knowledge. And English, another thing I have to mention, is a lingua franca, which is a term meaning the language used commonly everywhere in the world right now. So you go to China, you're gonna speak English. You go to Spain, you're gonna speak English. You're gonna find some English speakers. You go to England, it's already England. But you go to, for example, Saudi Arabia, you're gonna speak English with some people. You're gonna use English anywhere in the world right now. So uh, knowing the language to a high in a high level, more than just being able to hold a conversation for like 10 minutes, but being able to actually sit down and speak about business, about philosophy, theology, history, about your thoughts, your feelings, your emotions, about your ideas, about your projects would help you a lot in selling whatever you're going to be selling, or in meeting whoever you're going to be meeting, and in sitting on equal terms with a native English speaker when it comes to languages. This will help us a lot in the future. I believe that. And I believe that because we are in a very good university, um, I mean, in the Middle East at least, we have the potential to be something. And in order to be something, we also need to improve the communication skills. So pushing the comfort zone, or pushing ourselves out of the comfort zone, let me put it this way, would make the discomfort our comfort, in fact, and we get used to it, and it becomes something very natural. Right now, I don't really think, what should I say, although I'm speaking a language that I didn't really know much like 6 years ago. This is because it's just it comes with practice and with using the language in a daily basis, in watching things in English, in reading things in English, whatever it might be. It doesn't really matter. I would suggest novels and books because I'm a literature guy, but that's my own perspective. You might do anything, you might read anything, whatever thing you might be interested in, but in English, so that you might improve the skills. Thank you so much for having me today, Ayub, and see you in the next podcast. Take care.